What happens when the man who built the company from scratch hears his own employees say he's the reason they can't afford groceries? Yarden Owens had started with a single oven in a rented garage, baking bread through the night and delivering it himself in the morning. That was 15 years ago. Now, his bakery chain had 11 locations across 3 states, and he hadn't touched dough in over 5. He used to know every name, every story. But lately, things had gotten too big, too fast. His operations team handled most of the hiring. He relied on district managers to run the stores. He hadn't been to some of them in more than a year. But 2 weeks ago, an email caught his eye. It was from a customer, not a complaint, more like a concern. "I've been stopping by your Eastwood location late at night for years," it read. "The bread's still good, but the energy's gone." The new crew looks exhausted. One of them dropped a tray and just stood there like he wanted to cry. That was enough. He didn't want a report. He didn't want a filtered version. He wanted to see it with his own eyes. So he shaved his beard, dyed his hair, and put on a fake name. Dale. He had his assistant set up a fake profile through a temp agency that fed night workers to several of his stores. His own HR team didn't even know he was doing it. The Eastwood Bakery was one of the newest. Opened just last year. He'd never met the crew. Most of them were hired post-COVID through virtual interviews. No one would recognize him. He got the overnight trainee slot for the following Tuesday at 10:30 p.m. He walked into the back entrance wearing a plain black hoodie and old jeans. The smell of warm bread hit him instantly familiar, grounding. A tall, broad guy with a stained apron looked up from a rack of cooling croissants. "You the new guy from Metro Temps?" the man asked, wiping his hands on a flour-dusted rag. "Yeah, Dale," Yarden said, offering a hand. The guy shook it. "I'm Marcus, night shift lead. Let's get you clocked in." Marcus walked him through the basics: dough prep, oven rotation, rack stacking. Yarden wasn't new to it, but he faked clumsiness to sell the act. The rest of the crew trickled in over the next half hour. A sharp-tongued woman named Carla, a quiet, focused guy named Louis, and a younger woman, early 20s, maybe named Priya, who wore headphones around her neck and moved like she was used to carrying more than her share. By midnight, the ovens were in full swing. Yarden worked the proofing table beside Priya. She was fast, efficient, but her eyes looked tired. Marcus passed by, barking half-jokes at her. "Hey, superstar, you gonna save this shift again?" Priya didn't even look up. "Just trying to get through the night, Marcus." Yeah. That's what we all say." Yarden kept his head down, but his ears were open. Around 2 in the morning, Carla and Louis started talking near the back sink while rolling out baguette dough. "Did you see the schedule next week?" Carla said, voice low but sharp. "They cut 2 hours from me again," Louis sighed. "Marcus said it's corporate labor reductions," Carla scoffed. "Yeah, right, you know they raised prices again last month and we still make the same damn hourly." "I'm tired of this," Louis muttered. "I'm 32 and still choosing between rent and groceries." Yarden's hands paused on the dough. Carla leaned in closer. "You ever met the owner?" Louis snorted. "Nah, just know his name. Rich guy, probably lives in a mansion somewhere, sleeping while we kill ourselves for scraps." Yarden swallowed hard. He didn't blink. He just kept shaping the bread silently. He stayed quiet all night, took breaks with them, carried trays, cleaned trays, pretended to be new and slow. By 5 a.m., the crew was thinned out. Carla had left early cut shift, she'd said bitterly. Priya was wiping down the display cases in the front. Yarden followed to help. "You always work nights?" he asked. She nodded. "Since my dad got sick, it pays extra, you know." "Not much, but enough." "Is it hard?" he asked gently. She looked at him. "Yeah, but I don't complain. It's just, no one listens when we do." He didn't respond. There wasn't anything he could say yet. At 6 a.m., Marcus clapped his hands. "All right, people, good job, Dale, not bad for a newbie." "Come back tomorrow?" Yarden nodded. "See you then." He walked out of that bakery, heart heavy. He had 9 more hours before the next shift. Back in his hotel room, he sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. "They think I don't care," he whispered. He thought about calling his district manager, asking about labor cuts, asking why Carla's hours were slashed. But he realized something. He didn't need another filtered answer. He needed to go back in, so he did. Second night, he pushed harder, asked more questions, got more answers. Turnover was high. The night crew was often short-staffed. Marcus picked up the slack when he felt like it. When he didn't, it fell on Priya or Lewis. Carla was burned out. The pay, barely above minimum wage, raises, none in over a year. The worst part, they all thought nobody cared. He went back a third night. Marcus was late, showed up hungover, then disappeared into the office for 2 hours. Lewis nearly dropped a full tray trying to handle too much alone. Yarden helped him catch it. "You okay, man?" Lewis breathed hard. "We're always short, always." "He just disappears once the bread's in. Says he's managing." Yarden's jaw clenched. He stayed quiet, for now, but something was building. By the fourth night, the rhythm of the shift had become muscle memory. Yarden no longer had to fake inexperience. He could move trays, operate the proofing cycle, and fold dough alongside the crew without drawing attention. But what was changing wasn't just how he worked, it was how they looked at him. He wasn't just the temp anymore. He was someone who stayed late without being asked, someone who helped when others disappeared. Trust had started to form, and with it, honesty. That night, Marcus didn't show up at all. No call, no message. At 11:30, Carla checked her phone and tossed it onto the prep table. "Of course," she muttered. "Second time this month." Priya glanced at the schedule taped to the wall. "We're down a person already. If he's not coming, we're gonna fall behind." Carla pulled a tray of starter loaves and slapped parchment onto the counter. "Then we fall behind. I'm not breaking my back for a shift lead who can't be bothered to show up." Lewis didn't say anything. He just turned on the second mixer and tightened his apron. Yarden stepped in to help Carla with the sourdough rounds. "Does this happen often?" he asked, watching her shape the portions with practiced speed. She didn't look up. "More than it should. He's got connections. The district manager used to work with him at another bakery." So when Marcus disappears or clocks out early, no one says anything. Yarden kept his tone even. "You ever think about reporting it higher up?" she snorted. "To who? HR? They'll just ask if we have proof, and even if we did, nothing changes. We lost a great baker last month because she asked for weekends off to care for her mom. They said they couldn't accommodate long-term flexibility, but Marcus can ghost a shift and still get overtime." Priya came over, wiping her hands on a towel. "We'll need to double the bake on the croissants if we're short tonight. Can you two help me laminate?" They moved to the opposite end of the room. The dough was chilled and firm, ready for its final fold. Yarden worked beside Priya in silence for a while, listening to the hum of the industrial fridge and the faint click of Carla's timer. The room smelled of butter and yeast, comforting but heavy. After a few minutes, Priya spoke, her voice quiet. "You ever think about leaving?" He kept his eyes on the dough. "Why?" She shrugged. "You don't talk like most temps. You help without being told. You don't complain, but I can tell you're watching everything. People like you don't stay long." He hesitated, then said, "I've thought about it. But I keep wondering if it's worse somewhere else." Priya gave a tired laugh. "I used to think that. Then I started applying. You know what I found? Everybody wants you to work like you're full-time but pay you like you're disposable. And if you say no, there's always someone else willing to take your spot. People are desperate." She folded the dough, pressed it down, and placed it back in the fridge. Yarden leaned on the counter. "What keeps you here?" She didn't answer right away. Then, after a pause, she said, "I can't afford to start over. My dad's home nurse costs more than rent. If I miss a paycheck, we lose coverage, so I stay, even when I know I'm being underpaid. Even when Marcus disappears and I end up working 2 stations." Lewis walked by, carrying a rack of seeded rye. "Hey, the walk-in fridge's fan is rattling again. I let Marcus know last week, but nothing's been done." Carla looked over. "It was making noise last week too." "Has anyone called maintenance?" Lewis shook his head. "He said not to, said it wasn't urgent enough to log a ticket." Yarden wiped his hands and walked to the fridge. He opened the heavy door and stepped inside. Cold air hit him immediately. The hum of the fan overhead was uneven, with a faint metallic clatter every few seconds like a loose bracket vibrating against the casing. He stepped out and let the door swing shut. "That thing fails, you'll lose half the inventory," Carla nodded. "Happened once last winter. Took 2 days to restock. We had to throw out over $1,000 worth of dough and fillings. We told Marcus it needed replacing. He said it wasn't in the budget." Yarden's jaw tightened. "What does the district manager say about all this?" Carla gave a bitter smile. "You mean the one who stops by twice a month, stays for 10 minutes, and leaves with a free lemon tart? She'll tell you everything's fine. She gets her reports from Marcus." Yarden didn't respond, not yet. By 4 in the morning, the entire crew was behind. Lewis was juggling both ovens. Priya was hand-rolling pastries that should have been machine-cut. Yarden took over cleanup, wiping down surfaces and stacking trays. Carla was fielding delivery prep, snapping at vendors who showed up early. The air was tense, but no one broke. They pushed through like they'd done before. At 5:30, the front lights flicked on. The early shift baker arrived, an older man named Devin who looked puzzled when he saw Yarden at the register. "Where's Marcus?" he asked. Carla answered without looking up. "Out again." Devin grabbed an apron from the hook. "Unbelievable. That's the 3rd time I've covered for him this quarter." "You keep track?" Yarden asked. Devin nodded. "I've been here 6 years. Seen 3 shift leads come and go. Marcus is the only one who keeps failing upward. I don't understand it." Yarden folded a receipt and slipped it into the drawer. "You think it's favoritism?" Devin lowered his voice. "I think it's abandonment. Nobody's watching, so people like him get away with it, and people like us absorb the damage." Before anyone could respond, the front bell rang, first customer of the morning. Priya wiped flour from her cheeks and stepped up to help. Yarden moved to the back, checking the final rack of Danish pastries. He looked at them, golden, flaky, still warm, and felt a pang of guilt. They deserved better. Not just the bread. The people. He peeled off his gloves and stepped outside. The sky was turning pale. The street was quiet, just a few early risers walking dogs or heading to work. He pulled out his phone and dialed. A groggy voice answered. "Yarden, it's me. I need you to meet me at Eastwood Bakery tonight, 9 p.m. "What's going on?" "No questions, just be there. And bring Deanna from HR and Ethan from facilities." There was a pause. "You found something?" Yarden looked back through the glass at the tired crew cleaning up behind the counter. "Yeah," he said. "I found everything." By 8:45 that night, Yarden stood outside the Eastwood Bakery's delivery entrance, a black knit cap pulled low over his dyed hair. A light drizzle had started, soaking the sidewalks and turning the air raw. He kept his back to the street, pacing slowly, glancing at his watch every few seconds. At precisely 9 o'clock, a black sedan pulled into the alley behind the building. The back door opened, and Deanna from HR stepped out first, her heels clicking on the wet pavement. She held a small folder against her chest, eyes scanning the loading area. Next was Ethan, the facility manager, a tall man with a permanent frown and a clipboard tucked under his arm. Finally, Arjun, the district manager, stepped out last, tugging his coat tighter against the wind. Yarden turned to face them, the rain dampening his sleeves. He pulled back his cap just enough for them to recognize him. Deanna's eyes widened. "You weren't joking," she said. "You really went in undercover?" "I needed to see it myself," he said simply. "Come inside." He led them through the staff entrance, past the dry storage racks and into the main prep area. The overnight crew wasn't scheduled for another hour. The kitchen was silent except for the ambient hum of the refrigeration units. Ethan peeled off his coat and walked toward the walk-in fridge without prompting. Yarden followed him. "Listen for yourself," Yarden said. Ethan stepped inside. A few seconds later, a harsh metallic rattle echoed out from the enclosure. He stepped back out, expression neutral but focused. "Mounting brackets loose," he said. If it shifts another inch, the fan could shear the motor housing. That whole unit would be toast. Replace it, Yarden said. Tonight, Ethan nodded once. I'll have my guy here in an hour. Yarden turned to Deanna next. Has Marcus ever been formally written up? She opened her folder and thumbed through the pages. One verbal warning for late arrival. That's it. Yarden narrowed his eyes. Even with the absences, these weren't logged as no-shows, she said. They were marked approved schedule adjustments, all signed off by Arjun. Arjun shifted uncomfortably. He told me they were trade-offs, that he was covering extra hours on other nights. Did you verify that? Yarden asked, his voice flat. Arjun glanced at the floor. I didn't think I needed to micromanage a shift lead. No, Yarden said. You just needed to do your job. There was a long pause. Deanna looked between them. What exactly do you want to do here? I want all of you to stay and observe the shift, Yarden said. Quietly, no announcements. No interference. Just watch. They agreed. By 10:30, the crew began to arrive. Carla came in first, tugging off her damp jacket and muttering something under her breath about the rain. She didn't notice the 3 people in the office behind the half-shut door. Lewis followed, rubbing his shoulder with one hand and carrying a small duffel in the other. He looked tired but focused. Priya was last. She walked in with her headphones around her neck, her hair tied back and a notebook tucked under one arm. Yarden had changed back into his Dale persona, now in uniform again, blending in as if nothing had changed. He greeted them as usual, stepping into his prep station as the mixers started humming. At 11:15, Marcus finally arrived. He walked in with a large coffee in one hand, phone in the other, scrolling through something as he kicked the door shut behind him. He didn't look up. Carla barely acknowledged him. You missed the tray count. We're already behind. Marcus waved a hand vaguely. I'll catch up. Had to handle some things. He vanished into the back office and didn't reappear for over 30 minutes. Yarden kept his movements calm, but every second ticked louder in his mind. He could feel Ethan and Deanna watching from the far side of the glass. Arjun hadn't said a word. Midway through the shift, the tension reached a new level. A large catering order had been added to the schedule, dozens of mini loaves and specialty rolls. No one had told the night crew until the stickers came out of the printer. Lewis picked up the ticket and scanned it twice. This wasn't on the queue earlier. Carla leaned over his shoulder. It's due by 5, that's 3 hours of work. We're already down 1. Priya checked the supply bins, then turned toward the office. We don't even have enough prepped rye for that batch. Carla tossed her rag onto the table. I'm not staying late again. I've already hit my cap and they won't pay overtime. Lewis looked toward the office door. Marcus? No response. Lewis raised his voice. Marcus, we need you out here. Still nothing. Yarden stepped forward. I can start the rye, but somebody needs to update the timing in the oven queue. Carla crossed her arms. He won't come out unless someone says there's a fire. Priya exhaled sharply, then walked to the office door and knocked. No answer. She opened it. From their vantage point, Deanna and Ethan could see inside. Marcus sat at the desk, one foot propped up on a storage bin, watching something on his phone with earbuds in. Priya stood in the doorway, her voice strained. We're behind. There's an unexpected order. You need to help us organize the bake schedule. Marcus didn't look up. I'll be out in a bit. You guys know how to handle it. Priya stared at him for a moment, then stepped back and let the door swing shut. When she returned, she didn't speak, just picked up a tray and started prepping the rye. That was the moment Yarden had been waiting for. He pulled off his cap and gloves, set them on the counter, and walked to the center of the kitchen. Everybody, he said. Stop for a second. The room stilled. Carla looked up, confused. What's going on? Lewis froze with a scoop of flour in his hand. You okay, Dale? Yarden met their eyes one by one. My name's not Dale. He walked toward the front, pushing open the office door. Marcus looked up, irritated. Hey, I told Priya I'd be out soon. You'll be out now, Yarden said. Marcus blinked, then narrowed his eyes. What? Yarden stepped aside and motioned toward the windowed office in the corner. Deanna, Ethan, and Arjun stepped into view behind the glass. Marcus stood up slowly. What is this? Yarden kept his voice level. I'm Yarden Owens, I own this company. And I've been working your shift all week. The silence that followed was complete. Carla leaned against the table, stunned. Louis stared at the floor like he was trying to replay every word he'd said. Priya's mouth parted, her expression unreadable. Marcus's face went pale. Look, I didn't know you were just avoiding your responsibilities, Yarden said. You left your team short-staffed, ignored safety issues, and falsified attendance records. I've been here 5 years, Marcus said, a trace of defiance returning to his voice. I've trained half the people in this room. You trained them, Yarden replied, and then expected them to carry you. He turned to the crew. I've seen how hard you work, I've seen what you've been carrying, and I'm sorry. I built this bakery from the ground up, and somehow I let it turn into a place where silence and shortcuts replaced leadership. No one spoke. Yarden looked at Deanna. Marcus's employment ends tonight, effective immediately, log it, she nodded. Arjun opened his mouth, but Yarden cut him off with a look. Then he turned back to the crew. Everyone who worked the last 3 nights will receive a retroactive bonus. We're restructuring the shift leadership starting next week. We'll be asking for your input on who should take over. Carla tilted her head, and after that, you disappear again. No, Yarden said, I'll be back, and not just here, every store, 1 a week. No notice, no prep. If it's broken, I want to see it myself. Priya stepped forward. What about the hours, the schedules? We're auditing them this month, he said. Overtime will be honored, and we're revisiting our pay scale. You'll hear the details from HR within 10 days. Louis finally spoke. Why the disguise? Because reports don't show you what it feels like to be ignored, Yarden said. You showed me. And I'm not going to forget it. The next evening, Yarden arrived at the Eastwood location just before the night shift started, this time through the front entrance in his real clothes under his real name. The staff had already been notified that he'd return not as a temp, but as the owner. There were no cameras, no press, no fanfare. Just him, a clipboard, and a long list of things that needed fixing. The bakery smelled the same, but the mood had shifted. Carla was at the prep table, organizing pans with tight precision. Louis was sorting ingredients near the walk-in, his movements slower than usual. Priya stood near the pastry station, arms crossed, watching the door. When Yarden stepped in, none of them moved at first. He nodded toward them. I'm not here to give a speech, I'm here to ask questions. And listen. Carla wiped her hands on a towel and leaned against the counter. So what happens now? Yarden set the clipboard down. Now we start correcting what went wrong, but I can't do it from behind a desk. I'm going to need honest feedback, specifics, what's broken, what's missing. What's keeping good people from staying? Louis stepped forward first. The equipment. It's not just the fan. The second mixer rattles so hard we have to brace it, and the timer on the small oven resets randomly. We've told people before, but it's always marked low priority. Yarden wrote without looking up. Got it. Carla folded her arms. We're still waiting on uniforms that were promised months ago. Half of us wear our own clothes because the last shipment had the wrong sizes. I'll add it to the supply audit, Yarden replied. We'll fix it this week. Priya didn't say anything right away. Her eyes stayed fixed on Yarden, searching his face, like she was still deciding if she believed this version of him. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. Pay is one thing, but what hurts is when we feel like we're invisible. People stop showing up and we're expected to just absorb it. We give notice when we're sick, we cover each other's shifts, we stay late, but it's like none of it matters. There's no acknowledgement, no check-in, just silence. Yarden set the clipboard down. That stops now. Starting this week, every store will have a rotating leadership present, someone from HR, facilities, or operations on site, unannounced once a week. No reports, no checklists, just observation and support. Carla raised an eyebrow. And if they don't show, they will, Yarden said. Because I'll know if they don't. Louis tapped the edge of the prep table. You said we'd have input on the new shift lead. How's that going to work? You'll vote, Yarden said. Each of you, anonymous ballots, HR will collect them, will tally by majority. Whoever you choose will support with real training, not just a title. Carla glanced at Priya. Then I know who I'm writing down. Yarden didn't respond to that. He didn't have to. He turned toward the back hallway. I need to speak with Arjun before his shift ends. Mind if I use the office? Lewis waved a hand. It's yours. Yarden stepped into the small room, closed the door behind him, and picked up the phone. Arjun answered after 2 rings. Come in, Yarden said. We need to talk face to face. 20 minutes later, Arjun arrived. He entered through the back, jacket damp from the rain, his expression unreadable. Yarden sat behind the desk, flipping through a printed copy of the last month's labor reports. I've looked at the logs, Yarden said. There were multiple discrepancies. Marcus's hours were padded. Some staff were marked as part-time when they were working full-time shifts. You signed off on all of it. Arjun stood with his hands in his pockets. I trusted the reports he gave me. I didn't expect him to manipulate the data. You didn't verify anything, Yarden said. That's the problem. You let familiarity replace accountability. Arjun looked away. I got comfortable, I admit that. Comfort's not the issue, Yarden said. Neglect is. There was a long pause. I'm not going to fire you, Yarden continued, but you're being reassigned. You're moving to the training division. You'll spend the next 60 days working shifts across 3 regions, entry-level only. No title, no authority, just observation, feedback, and rebuilding trust. Arjun's jaw tightened slightly, but he nodded. Understood. Good, Yarden said, because this isn't about punishment. It's about remembering who we serve. Once Arjun left the office, Yarden returned to the kitchen. The night crew had already started prepping the first round of dough. Carla was on the divider, humming softly. Lewis was reviewing the bake schedule with a red marker, adjusting for the next day's delivery. Priya was cleaning a prep table, her eyes scanning the space like she was already thinking 2 steps ahead. Yarden pulled on an apron and stepped beside her. Mind if I help? She didn't look his way. You sure you can keep up? He smiled faintly. Try me. They worked in silence for a few minutes. Then Priya glanced over. This thing you're doing, the visits, the changes, how long will it last? As long as it takes, he said. And longer than that, because it's not a one-time fix. It's a different way of running things, she nodded slowly. All right, Lewis called out from the oven station. Hey, Dale, sorry. Yarden, you want to run the next cycle? Yarden moved across the kitchen, hands already reaching for the control panel. Let's do it. As the shift continued, something subtle began to happen. The pace steadied. The corrections flowed without tension. When Carla needed help lifting a heavy tray, Lewis stepped in without being asked. When the mixer stalled, Priya adjusted the batch without breaking focus. No one raised their voice. No one disappeared. There was a rhythm to it now, not just the work, but the recognition that someone was finally watching and not from a distance. As dawn approached, the smell of fresh bread filled the space. The first delivery driver arrived, nodded toward the crew, and began loading racks. Yarden stepped back, hands dusted with flour, apron streaked with butter. He looked at the team not as employees, but as people who had been carrying weight he hadn't seen until he felt it himself. Carla wiped her brow with the back of her arm. Not bad, boss. You made it through a full shift without burning the place down. Yarden laughed once. I'll take that as a compliment. Priya leaned against the counter, arms crossed. So what happens next week? We start holding voting in every store, Yarden said. Then we begin exit interviews with everyone who left in the last 6 months. I want to know why, and I want to make sure the door's open if they want to come back. Lewis looked up from the clipboard. And after that, Yarden said, we keep listening. And we make sure no one ever feels invisible again. The sun was beginning to rise outside, casting a soft amber light across the counter. The display cases were full. The ovens were quiet. For the first time in a long while, the room didn't feel tired. It felt ready. Yarden pulled off his apron and set it on the hook by the door. I'll see you all again soon, and next time I won't be hiding behind a name tag. Carla nodded. Good. Because we've got more to show you. As he stepped outside into the morning air, the scent of baked bread still clinging to his sleeves, Yarden knew the work wasn't finished, but it had finally started in the right place, with the right people. And this time, he wasn't looking away.